Hi, everybody. Hope you've been having a good 2022 so far. I was originally going to do a top 5 games of 2021 in the traditional Platinum Warp Star episode style, but I honestly really didn't feel like doing it this year, mainly because there's a lot of other stuff I want to try and get to, a lot of other ideas I have, and also there weren't really super duper interesting games that came out this year. There are some really good ones, and today I'm going to be having a little bit of like a discussion of my favorite games this year, as well as my least favorite games this year. I've sort of decided to make up for the fact that I'm not doing top 5 games of 2021. I figured I'd just kind of do it into like a discussion slash rant format. It's pretty unscripted, but I just want to get my thoughts out there and stuff. So I'm actually going to be talking about the best and worst games I've played this year. It's going to be 5 best and 4 worst. The reason there's only 4 worst is because I don't really play that many bad games, to be honest. I honestly pick up games that I think looks interesting, and I don't really like investing my money in any game I see, which is games that I think were probably bad. So before we talk about the best games of 2021, I wanted to get the worst out of the way, just to get the negativity all out of there. So let's go ahead and begin. None of the games I listed are like truly awful, except for one of them, but let's just say these were games that I was disappointed with after I played them. Alright, so my 4th worst game of 2021 has to go to Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. This one is a little bit painful to put here because I'm actually a bit of a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, and I was actually really looking forward to this one due to the amount of ambition behind it. There's a lot of budget and effort put into it, but the thing is, the game came out and it was very buggy and unpolished, and it just really wasn't that scary. You could argue if Five Nights at Freddy's games are even really that scary to begin with, but I was hoping that this one would be at least a little bit scary with some of the stuff I've seen. But unfortunately, this is honestly probably the least scary Five Nights at Freddy's games in the entire franchise. Out of all the games, I was rarely ever scared at all when I was playing this, and this is actually the first Five Nights at Freddy's game I played completely blind, so I didn't know what to expect, and it still didn't scare me. There were like 1 or 2 parts that got me a little tensed up and maybe even scared, but throughout the rest of it, the game is just kind of overly bright, and the characters aren't really that scary whatsoever, aside from maybe a few exceptions, but even those exceptions don't appear in the game that much. And another thing that completely ruins the game for me, aside from all the game-breaking bugs that just completely ruin everything, they're these staff bots that roam around the Pizzaplex, and they're the substitute for the game's challenge, and they're just fucking everywhere. Whenever you run into one of them, it immediately alerts the animatronic and teleports it to your location. It just feels like, since the areas are too big, it feels like that's what they had to do in order to make the animatronics threatening instead of giving them like good AI. So I don't know, the staff bots just they just feel like a cheap sense of challenge, and that's probably the biggest flaw I have with the game, outside of the fact that the game is really unfinished and unpolished. Other than that, I didn't completely hate the game. I actually liked parts of it. It has some fun ideas, and I genuinely really like the Pizzaplex environment, and sometimes the gameplay itself can be fun. It can be pretty fun exploring the Pizzaplex. So out of all the games on this worst list, I'd probably say this is the one it's probably the most fun, but it's by far the most disappointing one for me, because I was quite looking forward to it, and I was pretty sad when it launched in the state that it's in, especially after the previous game the studio made, Help Wanted, was really, really good, in my opinion. So it was pretty sad seeing the state that this game launched in. Hopefully it'll get fixed soon, but that doesn't excuse how bad the launch was. As for number 3, we're going to be putting Sonic Colors Ultimate here. Now this is a remaster of a 10-year-old game, actually 11-year-old game at the time of this recording. But unfortunately, similar to Security Breach, it launched in a really bad state. And the reason this is lower than Security Breach is because it's kind of a bit of a shame that they fucked up a remaster this bad. It's a game that already exists and they just made it worse. And it's a remaster of a good game too, so it's really just bizarre that they fucked it up as much as they did. There was a lot of game-breaking bugs in the game, a lot of visual bugs. The graphics are kind of hit or miss, and there was a huge lack of options at the game's launch. You couldn't turn off the remixes, whether you preferred them or not. And I prefer the original tracks because some of the remixes are kind of not great. Of course, that is just subjective. I did a whole video review on Sonic Colors Ultimate, so you can check that out if you want. I sum up my thoughts on it much better than I do here, but it was just a real shame that one of the best games in the series was just pretty trashed for this remaster, and a bunch of people turned against Sonic Colors because of the remaster. It was a real unfortunate way to celebrate Sonic's 30th anniversary. If you want to have a better celebration of Sonic's 30th anniversary, go watch the Sonic 30th Anniversary Symphony. That shit was really damn good. As for number 2, this is going to be a bit of a controversial placement, but I'm putting that to Mario Golf Super Rush. You might be wondering why it's lower than Buggy Messes as Security Breach and Sonic Colors Ultimate, but I do have my reasons. The thing is, in my personal opinion, Mario Golf Super Rush represents everything I hate about modern Nintendo. The game is pathetically lazy. At launch, at least, there was an extreme lack of content, and it had way less content than even the GameCube game. It just really didn't feel like there was any passion put into it. It felt soulless. There was a huge lack of whole animations when you do a victory, especially when you compare to the 3DS game where the victory animations were filled with so much life. This game just feels like it was just sharded out to make a buck for the Switch. And there's just a real lack of content in the game. There was only 6 courses when the game launched, as opposed to 3DS games like 10. I think it had 10 courses. I will say the gameplay is fun for the most part. Speed Golf is probably the best thing about the game because it's actually an interesting spin on Mario Golf. But the problem I have with the gameplay is that it's really overly simplistic compared to the other Mario Golf games, and it's really easy to just cheese your way to the goal. Like, bunkers in Mario Golf Super Rush mean absolutely nothing. You could just easily full power a shot out of a bunker and still make it in the hole. The thing is, they try to make a trade-off in Mario Golf Super Rush, where the harder you hit the shot, the less accurate your shot will be. But most of the time that doesn't even fucking matter because all you're trying to do is make it to the green, and it's just relying on RNG how bad your accuracy is. So your accuracy could be still spot on and you hit it from the bunker where your accuracy is supposed to be at its lowest. I don't know. It just removes a lot of the strategy from Mario Golf, and it just makes it into a hit the ball the goal fest rather than trying to strategically take shortcuts and take risks. It just didn't feel like a very good version of Mario Golf. And not only that, there was this adventure mode which had an awful difficulty spike right at the beginning with cross-country golf. That shit was abominable. And the ending to it, I won't spoil, but the ending is really fucking pathetic. Like, it's genuinely just characters saying some stuff in some text boxes and then they just cut to credit. It's one of the most underwhelming endings I think I've ever seen in a video game, if I'm being honest. That being said, it's not a terrible game. Yeah, I can think of worse games, but honestly, it reminds me a lot of Pokemon Sword and Shield, where it just feels like they were just pumping it out to make a buck and putting as little effort into it as possible. They did the bare minimum with Super Rush. That, and even after some of the DLCs come out, I really don't think the DLC courses are that good. They just feel all over the place, and they don't really feel carefully designed at all. Oh, it's just like, you start from here, get in this hole. It doesn't feel like a handcrafted course like some of the other courses in the game, if you know what I mean. But yeah, Mario Golf Super Rush, I didn't like this game. It was really disappointing. I really like Mario Golf, so it was really a shame to see this one just get half-assed and pushed out for $1, and the game is $60. Like, no way in hell is Super Rush worth $60. It is. Ooh, I would get it if you can get it for like less than $30. That's like the max, if you ask me. If you've watched a bunch of other top 5 or top whatever lists of the worst games of the year, you could probably guess what the number 1 is gonna be. It's obviously gonna go to Balan Wonderworld. Balan Wonderworld is probably one of the worst games I think I have ever played. I gotta say right off the bat, I do need to thank my friend for gifting me the game instead of me actually buying it, but god dang it, that doesn't change how I feel about the game. The game is horribly designed. It is in every aspect designed to be not fun. The game is really, really slow. The levels aren't interesting at all. Maybe they are on an aesthetic level, but design-wise, they're just really uninteresting, and they're just really flat. And there's just no semblance of fun when playing the game at all. Like I said, you move really slowly, and you only do one button to play the game, which is jump, and depending on what costume you have, it either changes your jump, or if it's just a fucking attack, it outright removes your jump, meaning you have to go find another costume if you want to jump. It's just a really badly designed game. It's not like a glitchy, buggy mess, but it's an example of how game design can ruin a game. The one button gimmick of Balan Wonderworld absolutely ruins anything it has going for it, because it just completely messes with the structure of the game. You'll pick up costumes that you don't even want. In fact, they're a detriment to you. You'd rather just run around with no costume than pick up the costume you can't jump with. The only thing I can maybe say positive about the gameplay is that the bosses are kind of interesting. You have to find different ways to attack, and it's probably the most unique part of the whole game. Some bosses I would even probably go as far as to say they're pretty fun, but it's not like amazing stuff, but the bosses are okay. They're probably the most interesting part about the game. And going into some of the positives, there actually was quite a bit of effort gone into Balan Wonderworld. The cutscenes are actually really well done. It has really good CGI. There's a lot of budget put into them. Specifically the beginning and the ending. It even changes depending on what character or hair color you picked for the character you start out with in the game. And that's a really nice attention to detail. I actually quite like that. And the soundtrack is actually amazing. The soundtrack in Balan Wonderworld is really fucking good. It is probably the best part about the game, kind of like Sonic 06, where the soundtrack in that game was the only really good part about that game. That's kind of the same with Balan Wonderworld. Balan Wonderworld has a really fucking good OST, and whenever I was playing the game, I was just sad because a game that had such a great OST was such shit. Balan Wonderworld is just the anti-fun game. It's slow, it's repetitive, it isn't any fun, it's designed super poorly, there's a lot of backtracking if you want to go to 100%. and nothing about it really feels fleshed out except for maybe the aesthetics. The character designs are good, that's one thing I'll give it, but other than that, it's just a fucking travesty. It's one of the worst games I think I've played. But yeah, Balan Wonderworld is honestly a really hard game to talk about because pretty much everything about it is just really fucking bad. Sometimes the game looks pretty, but that doesn't make up for how mind-numbing the gameplay is. You don't even get to play as the person on the box, which is Balan. He's the most interesting looking character out of all of them, and instead, you play as him through shitty QuickTime events. It's just... Balan Wonderworld is such a mess. Do not play it whatsoever, not even on a fucking sale. Maybe try it if it's given to you for free, but for goodness sake, do not play it. It is like the Bubsy 3D of this generation of gaming. But enough of me throwing a giant fit and crying like a little bitch baby. We're going to talk about some positive stuff. We're going to talk about the best games I played last year. I don't really have too much to say about some of these, so we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. Number 5 has to go to Mario Party Superstars. This was quite a surprise, honestly. This was an actually genuinely good Mario Party game. The first one in a really long time, probably since Mario Party DS. I think that was the last truly great Mario Party. We had Super Mario Party on the Switch before, but that one was just kind of okay. It was more of just a step in the right direction more than actually being a fun Mario Party game. It was just more so to lay the groundwork for this game, Mario Party Superstars. Mario Party Superstars is what Mario Party the Top 100 should have been. It's a collection of not only 100 of the best minigames, but also 5 fan favorite party boards, and it actually brings back the classic style of Mario Party and what made it great in the first place. It brought back chance time, it brought back the charm of Mario Party and its maps. There was a lot of care and effort put into many aspects, like the graphics. It's a really nice looking upgrade from the N64 and GameCube and Wii and whatever titles, because it pulls from a bunch of different Mario Party games. But yeah, this was genuinely a great Mario Party game, and it's a lot of fun with friends. I definitely had a ton of fun playing with some of my online friends with Mario Party. I've always wanted to play Mario Party with some of my online friends, and while we could do that through emulating some of the games through Parsec and playing them through that, this is honestly quite a bit of an accessible way to do that, aside from the game costing $60, but Nintendo's gonna Nintendo, so whatever. The only real complaint I have with this one is that maybe some things are missing from the original, like some of the cutscenes are kinda gone. I kinda wish some of the outfits from Mario Party 2 returned for some of the party boards in that game, and the online still kinda sucks. But to be honest, what do you expect? I mean, it's still an issue. I'm not excusing it, but you know, that pretty much goes for every Nintendo Switch game that has online. But yeah, no, Mario Party Superstars is a great fucking Mario Party game. I really liked it. It's a lot of fun. I haven't played it in a while, but I want to play it more in the future. It's definitely the best Mario Party game to release in a really long time, and I can't wait to play more of it with more friends in the future. Next up is gonna go to Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, an actual PS5 exclusive that released this year. There was another one, I think it was called Returnal, but I was more interested in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I was excited for it ever since its announcement because it is an absolutely gorgeous game. Probably the most beautiful cartoony style games I think I've ever seen. It's a lot of fun too. The gameplay is really fun, shooting up a bunch of bad guys with multiple different weapons. I haven't played that many Ratchet & Clank games, so this is kind of one of the first ones I played aside from the 2016 remake. But it is definitely a really great game, and it actually has great use of the PS5's capabilities, like the fast SSD and the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback of the controller, it definitely has a lot of great use of that. And it's a game that can be played without those things, but those things definitely enhance the experience. And I also think it handles playing as multiple characters really well. Like, you have the two main characters, Ratchet and Rivet, and normally I don't really like games that make you play as multiple characters because it makes things become a little bit unfocused. And there are multiple gameplay styles in this game, but Ratchet and Rivet play identically, and they even share the same inventory. So if suddenly you're playing as Ratchet, you change into playing as Rivet, you still have the same weapons and ammo and currency than you had back when you were Ratchet. And I actually really like that. That way you're not keeping track of multiple different inventories. It keeps things focused while just giving a bit of a different perspective on a story level when you play as multiple different characters. So I definitely really appreciate the way they handled multiple characters in Rift Apart, even though there are really only two characters you play as, aside from a couple sections with Clank and the glitch virus character thing for some sections as Ratchet. But yeah, it's just a really fun game. It's really well put together. It runs great. It's a lot of fun. It's just a great game to get for your PS5. I would definitely recommend it as one of the first games you get if you get a PS5 for like your birthday or Christmas or something. It's a lot of fun. It's really well made, and I'm excited to play more of it because it's a really good game. Next up on the list has to go to Resident Evil Village. This was an interesting one. It had some really interesting locales. I really liked exploring the village and Lady Dimitrescu's castle and some of the other areas the game has to offer. It has a lot of really fun gameplay too, pretty much for the same reasons I like Resident Evil 7, except, now it's a bit more in the style of Resident Evil 4, where it has a lot more of an emphasis on action and combat, and it is definitely really solid stuff. You gotta watch your inventory for how much ammo you have and what enemies to shoot and not shoot. But there's definitely a variety of different villains in the game, and there's also a lot of neat puzzles in the game. That's definitely one thing that Resident Evil does well. There's a lot of interesting puzzles in the game that makes you feel good when you solve them. They're not my favorite part of the games, but they're definitely part of the Resident Evil experience. The only complaint I really have with Village is that it's not really that scary of a game. After Resident Evil 7 was actually a pretty scary game, I was hoping that they would extend on that and make Resident Evil 8 scary as well. But I keep saying Resident Evil 8. I mean Village, but you know what I mean. It's Resident Evil 8. But the game's not that scary aside from one part of the game. And the reason they made it less scary is because apparently Resident Evil 7 was too scary. And that's kind of a bit dumb if you ask me, because I honestly thought that's why people really liked Resident Evil 7, because it was scary and it was a return to form. Resident Evil Village is definitely good, even if it's not that scary, but it's a bit disappointing that we couldn't get something as scary, if not scarier, than Resident Evil 7, and hopefully they improve on that in Resident Evil 9. I want to talk more about Resident Evil Village in the future, but I'm gonna save that for a later date. Number 2 has to go to Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. You gotta understand, I am a die-hard Super Monkey Ball fan. Super Monkey Ball is my child. That came out a little bit wrong, but I grew up with Super Monkey Ball. I have been a fan of the series ever since I played Super Monkey Ball Deluxe back in the day. I played a bunch of the games past, some of them were not really as good, but having Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania finally be a thing, a return to form to classic Monkey Ball with some quality of life improvements, it really just makes me happy to see Monkey Ball back in the spotlight once again, as it is probably one of my Monkey Ball Deluxe or Monkey Ball 1 and 2 are probably some of my favorite games of all time. So I was just really fucking happy to see Monkey Ball return in such a great way. It's about as good as the originals, or if not, maybe a little worse, but it's definitely nothing I would call bad. I've seen some people quite disappointed with the game, but honestly, I would compare Banana Mania probably to Insane Trilogy, Crash Insane Trilogy anyways. Insane Trilogy had a mostly accurate control style to the original, but it still wasn't quite the same as the originals, so there were still some people that preferred the original PS1 games to the Insane Trilogy, and that's kind of how I view Banana Mania. Banana Mania is definitely a really solid game, but I can see why some would prefer the originals. The physics aren't quite the same. They're different, but they're definitely not bad if you ask me. And yeah, it's just kind of different. You just gotta kind of tweak your muscle memory a bit. Once you get past that barricade, it's definitely still a really solid and fun game. It's about as good as the originals. It's probably the most accessible way you're gonna play the original Monkey Ball games now, because well, trying to get them on eBay might be a little bit hard or expensive. I don't know how much they cost. And to my surprise, the party games were actually well made too. I was expecting them to be a pile of trash like Banana Blitz HD's party games, but no, they did a good job recreating the classic 12 party games in Monkey Ball 1 and 2. I have some quirks with some of them, specifically one, Monkey Target, is kind of bad now, unfortunately. They kind of butchered it. They butchered the physics to a point where it's not really good. It's just pretty tedious and uncomfortable to play, so that's the only part where I think they majorly fucked up. But all the other party games play absolutely fine. I think some of them may even be an improvement to the original, but some of them I still do prefer the original for. But that's just me. It's kind of personal preference whether you prefer Banana Mania in general to the originals or not. And I still hold the originals near and dear to my heart, but Banana Mania is definitely a solid way to play those games, and I would definitely recommend that you buy it if you want to see more great Monkey Ball stuff in the future. Yeah, Banana Mania had a lot of heart put into it, and it just makes me really glad to see Monkey Ball be in a good position again after all these years. It definitely saved the franchise. And the last game I have to say will get my game of the year is Metroid Dread. I only got into the Metroid series very recently, but I really liked all the previous games I played, and Dread has to be probably one of the best ones in the series. Dread was definitely a monumental hype occasion when it was announced. A game that was seemingly canceled for over 15 years suddenly was brought back into limelight and actually completed. Seeing that happen is such a rarity, and it is super awesome when it does happen. I was really glad when I saw that Nintendo was reviving Metroid Dread, even though I didn't really follow Metroid Dread's history before then. But even aside from Dread's legacy, it's an absolutely incredible game. It's a really great Metroidvania. It's really, really fun to play. It has great level design and world design. There's a lot of neat details there. It runs really well for a Switch game, and it looks really good for it being on the Switch. It's pretty surprising how well it runs, given how good the game looks. But then again, it is a first-party Nintendo game, so I guess it's only natural to expect that they know how to use the hardware to the best of its abilities. And the audio design in the game is actually really fucking good. And the gameplay, I would probably have to say, is the most fluid and fun in the series. It's really cool being able to have 360 degrees of aiming. Platforming actually feels really good. In some of the other games, it felt kind of floaty and a bit jank. But Metroid Dread, it feels fast-paced and a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun moving around in Metroid Dread, and that's a sign of a really solid game. Metroid Dread is definitely probably one of the best games in the series, honestly. I don't know if I'd say it's the best, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely a great way of modernizing the classic 2D Metroid formula. And just the fact that, and I think one of the things that just makes it one of the best games in the series is just modern game design in general. You know, fixing all of the stuff in the previous games that didn't work and taking what did work, do those even better. Metroid Dread is definitely my game of the year. It's really fucking good. I recommend you buy it. Even though I'm a bit iffy on Nintendo as a company at the moment, I still would say even without a price drop, you should probably buy it. The other games I would probably say, maybe they're not worth $60, but no. Metroid Dread, while it isn't the longest game out there, definitely feels like it's worth $60 just because it's a really good experience. And it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of replayability to it. Just to go back and see how fast you can beat the game. It really rewards memorizing the world and memorizing everything that happens so you can go back and get a faster time and get better endings in the game. Metroid Dread is just a phenomenal game, and I think you should absolutely go and pick it up if you're a Switch owner. Although you probably should play the other games in the series first. It's a shame that Nintendo won't put them up on the eShop, but, you know, what are you going to do is Nintendo just fucking emulate them. But yeah, those were my top best and worst games of 2021. Hopefully next video I make is a more proper video. But yeah, thank you all for watching and or listening. Let me know what your favorite games of the year were down below. Y'all have a good day. Thank you all for watching. And I'll see you all in a future video.